and welcome to Investors Hangout. This fortnightly interaction to help you learn and understand savings and investment issues is brought to you by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund and Value Research. Now, the windup of the 6 debt mutual funds of Franklin shook the investors of debt mutual funds as well as the entire industry. Many of the investors are still waiting to get their money back. So, what exactly happened to these schemes? What are the findings of SEBI's investigation? And what should the debt investors do now? To discuss this, joining me today is Dhirendra Kumar, CEO Value Research. Welcome, Dhirendra.
Thank you, Rajra.
Now, Franklin is back in news after SEBI's investigation report and order. So can you please help us understand what exactly the regulator has found there?
Yeah, the SEBI order is out after the long wait and after all the forensic audit that was commissioned by SEBI. And the initial litigation that followed the closure of the funds. So it has taken very long. But what is resulting from this order, broadly, if I have to classify, or if I have to broadly, list those things. One is that SEBI order is clearly saying that there has been a risk management failure at Franklin Templeton. Given their scale, they should have managed it far more intensely, the risk bit of it, and particularly the liquidity risk. That is what the fund was faced with, of an extreme situation, and it was unable to deal with it effectively. Number two, technical failure, fault lines in terms of the calculation of the macro duration, which should have taken care of it, or has been violated, or has been breached, or not been followed precisely exactly. The SEBI order clearly, points to one thing which really raises eyebrow, is that the fund did not exercise the exit options, which was embedded in the different bonds that they held, and as a result of which, maybe the valuation was manipulated, because by having those exit options, the fund could value it differently, but it was not exercising it, which means that it was just meant for valuing it. So that is something which really brings on forefront that things needs to be far more tightly regulated. And SEBI order on the tone of it clearly says that it will be. It looks more like a rap on the knuckle, in the sense that if anybody violates these norms, even by a small margin, in a small way, it is unlikely to get unnoticed, and it will be penalized. It's a very lengthy analysis of all the facts in the order, and that takes a good part of the volume of data and all the forensic audit and all the numbers. But all this translates into a penalty for the asset management company, and which is quite significant. The penalty in isolation looks like a small amount, 5 crore for Franklin Templeton, but it's just not 5 crore. It's nearly 450 crore by way of reimbursement, or returning to investors all the money that has been earned in 2 years by way of management fee before the closure of the fund. So that's one. Add to it the interest on it. So it all aggregates to nearly about 520 crore or something. So that's quite a significant amount in terms of returning the money which was earned by the fund by way of management fee. The third thing is a ban on the AMC from launching another debt fund. This may not have a significant impact for Franklin, because they have a wide range of funds available anyway, and they're closing 6 of these funds. But banning the fund from launching any debt fund for next 2 years. There is another detailed report elaborating in great detail all the transactions of a director and his family, and they withdrew about nearly 30 crore from the fund within 45 days of the closure of the fund, the winding up announcement. And this looks like a fiduciary breach in terms of not the fiduciary responsibility they have, acting on a set of information which was otherwise not available to investors, and they acted on that. And for that, they have been there's a penalty. There is a fine of nearly 7 crore, and they're also debarred from the market to participate from the capital market for 1 year. So that's quite. I don't know whether they go into appeal for this order, But the asset management company has already announced that it will go and appeal in the Securities Appellate Tribunal against the order. So let's see what happens and what kind of argument they come up with. But as of now, the sum total of all this is that SEBI is going to take things far more seriously, and they have taken a very hard note of everything. And it's just not about a closure and the mechanics of it, or whether the winding up was legal or not, but it has gone into great detail in terms of looking at how funds have conducted. And it is just not a lesson for, it is just not noting what happened at Franklin Templeton and holding them accountable with the penalty and narrating all the things that happened. This is also a lesson for all the asset management company, because everybody will read it very closely and try and make sense of what not to do and in future. So this is going to be quite a lesson for all fund companies in their debt fund management.
All right, that's specifically on the Franklin side, but what steps has SEBI taken in general after the Franklin fallout, and how do you think will it help investors in future?
Oh, there has been a series of changes after this Franklin Templeton crisis, the winding up announcement, and it took and if I have to list all the things that have happened, one was that these funds, they were enabled, now they will be listed. So that was the first step, that if somebody needs money in a hurry and somehow urgently, there is an exit avenue available to them. The other was that mandating 10% allocation to liquid assets. So everybody has to keep 10% handy in all their debt funds, so that they don't get into a desperate situation if they're faced with any unusual redemption overnight. Then came, the fortnightly disclosure of the portfolio. So SEBI, our mutual fund industry, and particularly the debt fund, have been very high on transparency, on disclosure. And now it has been made more frequently because now fortnightly disclosure will make sure that investors are very much in the know what they are getting into, or the changing complexion of a fund. Then the YTM disclosure. So, it's too much detail will now be available. But I think the most significant thing that has come of late, which came a day before the SEBI order on Franklin Templeton, was the risk class matrix, which they have mandated for debt fund. This is something which, at Value Research, we have had it for nearly 20 years. When you look at any debt fund page on Value Research Online, you will see a box, a style box. And that style box for a debt fund was on two axes. We have historically looked at funds based on two matrix, which is the rate sensitivity, depending on the majority of the fund. If a fund is holding 15-year security, or if a fund is holding 30-day security, its sensitivity to interest rate changes will be very different. So on one dimension, it is that, and the other is the credit quality. A fund which is holding a very high quality portfolio as compared to a fund which is not holding, or holding low quality portfolio on a relative basis, will behave differently. Investors will, and the valuation also might change dramatically in extreme times. So this is trying to give some kind of aggregated, because bond funds, it's a collection of bonds. So one has to really aggregate that. So providing this, enabling this risk matrix to all mutual fund investors, and every fund company has to calculate it, disseminate it. So this is the official disclosure of their aggregate character of the fund on these two dimensions. So I think investors will be able to take a much more informed decision based on all the data enablement by SEBI of late.
Coming specifically to the investors who were invested in the 6 schemes of Franklin, it's been more than a year and they still haven't got their money back in full. It's coming in tranches for them. So what should they be doing about it?
They can't really do anything. They have to wait and wait for the money to come. The court order has mandated that all the redemption, the realization, the liquidation of all the assets till the winding up has been entrusted to SBI Mutual Fund, and they are doing it. If we look at it, all the 6 funds, and the aggregate money given back to investors, it amounts to nearly 70%. So a good amount of money, but it's different. The percentage is different for different funds. It's not 70% in all the funds. They are not uniform. A good part of the shorter maturity funds has been realized. So in ultra short term and the short term bond fund, it's nearly over 80%, 85%. In other funds, it is less. So one is that investors don't have a choice. They have to wait for the money to come their way, and it is happening. It will happen, and it depends whether the SBI, whether the liquidation of all the assets in the fund, the market has normalized quite a bit. The fund has not faced any loss. The NAV of the fund from the time of closure to so far is higher. So investors haven't really faced a loss, but their money got stuck. And in some funds, they have got their 80-85% money. In some funds, they have got about 50-60% money. They don't have anything to do. They can't do anything as of now, but they have to wait patiently. The other is that what do you do with the money which you are getting? Depends on different individuals, because the fund where you have got 80, 85, or 90% of your money are the funds which were meant for very short-term investment. So maybe you needed the money badly, you borrowed money because you did not get it in time, and maybe liquidate your your borrowing, prepay your pay back the borrowing that you have done, or do whatever you want with your money. But if it is for the long-term investment, then you have to look at options and look at the most appropriate option given the experience that we have seen so far. And that might be different from when you invested in these funds, your orientation of investing in debt funds was different. Now all the risk cropping up, I think investors, it is a wake-up call. Investors should look at risk differently, and they should take it seriously. So far, before this incident, I think investors just thought that risk is something being talked about in terms of volatility, but it doesn't hit you. It does hit you, and one has to prepare well in advance. It is not visible on a day-to-day basis. All that is visible is return, and that is what we see and get carried away, and that is not a good idea.
Now, because of this one episode, one should not, completely shy away from debt funds, and they should rather be more cautious. Can you talk about that a bit, and what precautions or steps should a debt fund investor take from here on?
One has to look at Franklin Templeton episode as a bad accident, and that doesn't mean that you should stop traveling. Mutual funds or the debt funds still have a role to play in everybody's portfolio. Some of the fundamental case for the debt fund is that they remain a valid or a very meaningful vehicle to park your short-term money. Yes, one should take lesson from this and conduct oneself differently, and take all the lesson and take it to your heart, which is don't ignore risk, don't get carried by the return blindly, and if there is an extraordinary return, there has to be some compromise, because one should always be asking this very basic question, because any fixed income instrument or any investment vehicle is a combination of three things. One is that the risk, the return, and third is the liquidity. And anytime if you have return which is higher, then it has to be a compromise on the risk or the liquidity, or something has to give in for something else to be better. So you have to really ask this question all the time. If you see a great return, or if you see a great risk, or if you see a low risk, what is the compromise on? It is unlikely to be coming for free. And risk, your return you get to see every day. Everything else is not that visible. So you have to ask this difficult question and try to find an answer before you put your money, because after you put your money, many a times you can't do anything. So one is this: take risk seriously, understand risk well, and don't get carried by return only. Second is that mutual funds or the debt funds, the debt mutual fund, they still have a strong case. One is that the liquid funds or the short-term debt funds, they make a strong, they have a strong case simply because they are more tax-efficient vehicle. They have superior liquidity, and make sure that you are not getting attracted or not getting carried just by return itself. That will be disappointing. So if you have this, and all that has been enabled by SEBI of late, the risk matrix or the fortnightly portfolio, or the 10% liquidity enablement by SEBI in any fund, that actually makes it a superior liquidity in all kind of debt fund. So I would say that look at these numbers closely and keep looking at it. It's your money and you have to worry about it. So the moral of the story is that be little less greedy, have patience, choose the right fund, look at numbers, and there isn't a point getting scared by this incident and be out of it forever.
All right, time now to move on to the viewers' questions. The first one comes in from Deepa Jain, and she wants to know which category of debt fund would you suggest for a horizon of 2 to 3 years? She's seeking 2 to 3% extra return over and above the fixed deposit returns.
The case for debt funds becomes much stronger if you are going to hold it for 3 years and more. And before that, all the gains from a debt fund will be considered as income. So there isn't a great advantage. But the tax advantage kicks in the moment you hold a debt fund for 3 years and more. So I urge you that if it is a possibility, hold it for 3 years and more. And even if you are going to hold it for 3 years and little over 3 years and more, then even if you earn as much return as a deposit, your post-tax return will be higher because your gains will be indexed and you'll be liable for taxes only on the post-indexed, indexed gain, which will be far lower. So that's one. That apart, I would say that choosing which fund are on the side of caution. The interest rate outlook is still hazy. I don't know if interest rates will come down further or they will start going up again in six months to 1 year's time frame. And I've also come across situation where many fund managers, they are unable to predict it because the situation changes, the economic condition, and we are in a very unusual situation where anticipating the direction of the economy, we don't know what will be the impact post-COVID or the opening up, and how we will, what will be the scale of restoration of the economic momentum. So I don't know. So don't take a chance on that. Be little or on the side of caution, and with that standpoint, only consider short-term debt fund or banking and PSU fund.
All right, now Manoj Kumar asks, when can an investment in a liquid fund become negative, and how does it recover?
If I have to classify the life of, the phase in the life of a liquid fund ever since they got started or they have been made available to Indian investors, I would say that the initial 10 years, 10, 11 years, they had extreme flexibility. They were at liberty to do their valuation freely. Of course, gradually there was a ceiling on the duration of the bonds that they can hold. And once that was put in place, they will normally not go beyond that, and that was 6 months. But the first negative, and in the initial 10-12 years, none of the liquid fund went down in value, even on an overnight basis. The first time it happened was in 1 or 2 fund in the extreme situation in the 2008 crisis. But there was one occasion when many of the liquid funds faced the decline in value on an overnight basis. That was few years later in the taper tantrum, when the American Federal Reserve chief, she announced that the interest rates will go up, and there was a havoc in the bond markets globally, and that is when liquid funds also faced a decline in value on an overnight basis. But that decline in value was recovered in the next 3-4 days. And of late, in the last 1.5 to 2 years, the regulation or the regulation of the liquid fund portfolio, regulation mandating the management or the operating framework for liquid fund has undergone a change. What used to be the liquid fund, the very conservative ones, now they have been slotted into a different category, which is the overnight fund. So overnight funds are unlikely to be facing a situation where they will go down in value even on an overnight basis, on a day-to-day basis. The liquid funds, they can go down in value, and the likelihood of they going down in value on account of valuation, because now that has become more stringent. So that can happen more often, but still not that often. And if at all it happens, the magnitude of that fall could be very nominal, and at worst, it will recover in 7-8 days. But we have had, few instances of liquid fund where, the AAA rated commercial paper or very short-term security, money market instruments issued by some institutions or some companies. They saw, and that was particularly in the context of ILFS, where there was a top-rated commercial paper and which was held by many many liquid funds, and they saw a decline, and that was actually a write-off. They could not really recover that money. But the market-related, the mark-to-market losses of the liquid funds, one is able to recover in 4, 5 days, 6 days at worst. And that thing, that some of those liquid funds, they never recovered. But that was a one-off example we have. We don't have any other example of that kind.
Now, Nandini Nalkar will be turning 60 in a couple of months, and she plans to invest 15 lakh rupees each in government bonds and post office scheme. So she asks, is it advisable to invest in the monthly income scheme as the interest rates have become unpredictable and change every quarter?
It has been like this for a while now. And this time round, last quarter end, the government took a very sympathetic stand towards the people who invest in the senior citizen savings scheme and post office MIP by not reducing the interest rates that dramatically, as has been mandated by, or the system that was followed. So it was announced but not implemented. But I would say that for somebody who is getting into retirement and is going to depend on his investments for income, one has to get used to assuming a measured risk to optimize return if you're going to depend on income from your investment to make a living. And if you're going to depend, then you have to think in terms of a modest, a very small, or depending on your situation, a small or a modest, or maybe a significant equity allocation. If you're not going to depend heavily on your investment for income, then maybe having a 25, 30, 40% allocation to equity will be okay to preserve the value of your capital. In other cases, if you want stability of return at the same time protecting the worth of your capital, then maybe 10, 15, 20% into such fund, into equity allocation through a monthly income plan, or otherwise maybe your money is lying in the public provident fund or the senior citizen savings scheme to the extent of 15 lakh, maybe 5 lakh or 3 lakh in equity funds separately. That is how you'll be creating your allocation. That will become 20%, 30% of your total money. So 10 to 20% allocation to equity will help you protect the worth of your capital, which in retirement I think is important.
The next question has been sent in by Ramesh Chari, who's a retiree and risk averse. He's been fully invested in banking and PSU debt funds for about a year now, and he wants your advice on future course of action.
Yeah, banking and PSU fund turn out to be, they've proven to be a relatively safer one. And despite all the hue and cry about the credit crisis or the credit issues around debt fund, these funds haven't witnessed any big decline. But the return on these funds have come down dramatically, and you have to see that they are going to fulfill your aspiration or your need for the return on such investment. That's one. On the credit front, it's fine. So if you're happy with the return, then you should carry on.
A lot of female investors have sent in questions this time. So the next one comes in from Lakshmi, who is seeking your advice to manage 20 lakh rupees available to invest for an 80-year-old widow who wants to live off the interest. Her children can support to some extent, but she would ideally like to be independent, says Lakshmi.
20 lakh rupee, 15 lakh rupee to be put in senior citizen savings scheme. That is the highest yielding instrument available to senior citizens for anybody who is over 60, and for anybody who is who has retired and beyond 55. So that's one. And if this is going to be the only investment and the income from that, then this will also be effectively tax-free, because you'll be at the that money will not be taxed. But the maximum money that you can invest in senior citizen savings scheme is 15 lakh rupees. So the remaining 5, I would say, just to protect the worth of your capital, because the return that you get from senior citizen savings scheme, if you consume all, then 5 years from now, 10 years from now, of course, you need to supplement that capital, and spreading this investing this 5 lakh rupees into equity, 15 into senior citizen savings scheme yielding guaranteed return will be a good option, and should support her financially.
Right now, 65-year-old Abbas Ahmed has some investment in mutual funds, and he wants to know what would be the right asset allocation for him.
I'm not the best person to actually advise on his asset allocation, because a lot goes into what will, if it is a long-term investment and he's not expecting any return, he's not depending on any return on this investment, then it ideally, it should be 50-50, 50% into equity, 50% into debt, and rebalancing it every 6 months, or if it goes out of whack. If he requires income from his investment and is going to depend on that, then it requires a careful planning. Then maybe, the money that he needs in the next 3 years, that should be kept in a fixed income fund, and a conservative fixed income fund. And the remaining money, maybe, that should be 50-50. And periodically he should withdraw that money, some money from that as he is consuming, and that 3-year income requirement being parked in a debt fund and doing a systematic withdrawal plan from there. And remaining money, so this is a simple plan. Remaining money into 50% into equity, 50% into debt will make sure that his money is growing. At the same time, he is not in any anxiety for his income requirement.
You were just talking about 50-50 allocation to equity and debt, and the next question is somewhat related to that. Amardeep Babar Desai's portfolio is currently 50-50 in equity and debt. The total size is 7 lakh rupees. So he wants to know what allocation would you suggest for him going ahead?
As I said earlier, and once again, that I'm not the best person, because allocation depends on a lot of other things. One is that if you are in your accumulation phase, then you should not be 50-50. You should be, something like 80% into equity, 20% into debt, so that you are able to rebalance once in a while. But as you're still contributing, or you're still in the accumulation phase and many years away from needing your income, you can take risks, or you can withstand the volatility of the equity market better. So, but if you are in retirement, maybe 50% into equity, 50% debt is fine. It will keep it simple, and it will also present an opportunity to rebalance opportunistically. So it depends. Where do you stand and how long you're going to invest, or that is the primary driver of how your allocation should be.
Now, Arun Vishwanathan asks, should one continue with SIPs and small cap funds with a horizon of 7 to 8 years? He's asking this question specifically in the light of the current scenario.
I would say that, small cap funds, they prove to be extremely rewarding over this time frame. If you're going to invest for 8 years and more, they generally tend to be, most Indian small cap funds, they have been able to deliver superior returns than most other categories. But I'm talking of the aggregate. So, but I would say that if you have this time frame, then the current situation doesn't matter. In fact, the reward for the small cap investor comes from the fact that if the difficult time for there's a long phase in which the small cap stocks or the small cap funds don't do well. And it is important to investing through that time period that your small cap fund investment returns are better than others. So it is entirely a reward for your patience and your attitude to investing through the lean times that translates into superior returns. So carry on with the belief that you have.
Manish has a lump sum to invest in debt funds, so he wants to know if this is the right time or should he wait for market correction.
Debt funds of certain kind are not subject to market corrections. So if you're going to invest in liquid funds and short-term debt funds, you can well invest at one go and it doesn't matter. If you're going to wait for an interest rate cut or some such thing, you'll keep waiting. And debt funds, of course, debt funds also get affected by the change in the rate outlook or the interest rate changes, but they don't lose, they don't change, the values don't change that dramatically as we see in equity. So yeah, and if you're investing in these two categories, maybe you don't have to time it perfectly.
Apurva Narayan asks, is the current market rally justified, specifically when the third wave and fourth COVID wave is also expected?
The fact is that I don't know anything about this, that whether there'll be a third wave, whether there'll be a fourth wave, whether the third wave, the children will be affected more, or what happens to the market. There are a lot of I would say doomsday proponents who have been saying, waiting for that market correction for last 1 year or 15 months, and it has not happened. Market is going up, and simply the kind of liquidity we see in the market is driving the market. And I don't know if the market will correct. There is a possibility that the market will correct if a lot of people start pulling their money out at one go. And there are a lot of things that can happen in terms of interest rates going up once again abroad, and that will translate into a behavior of the foreign portfolio investors of an unusual kind. They start pulling back their money. All that is in the realm of possibility, but we don't know. And if you're investing for the long run, be there. Carry on with your investment, maybe change your asset allocation a little bit. And if you accidentally drifted into the market and you have been a beneficiary of this, take your money out. If you are likely to need your money in any next 2 to 3 years, take substantial part of your gains as well as a good part of your money, because that is a possibility which can't be ruled out. And if you don't have supporting time on your side, you will be in great difficulty.
Today's last question has been sent in by Santosh Bhosle, and he wants to know if it's advisable to shift all mutual fund investments from a regular to a direct plan, and how should one do it is what he asks.
Yeah, basically Santosh is asking that should he be take his money out and once again start doing a SIP. You don't need to. Only when you are investing for the first time, you need to really eliminate the possibility of catching a market high, and that is why you spread your investments over a period of time, and that is why SIP is advisable, or a systematic transfer plan from a debt fund to equity fund is advisable, so that it doesn't cause anxiety. But you have already invested and you are just moving to a lower cost plan of the fund, and you have chosen that you don't need advice, and that is why you're moving your money. So you don't need to. But be conscious of two things. One is that all your investment which have been made in the last 1 year might be subject to exit load. So take a closer look at exit load. Many funds do levy that. And the other is the short-term capital gains tax. So plan your exit from the regular plans in a manner, if it's possible, in a manner that all your investment made within the last 1 year, hold that, and all investments over 1 year old, move that money to the direct plan, and you can do it at one go.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this episode. Thank you, Dhirendra.
Thank you.
Thank you to all our viewers. Do keep sending us your questions and keep watching this space for more information. And if you like the show, do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Stay safe. Bye for now.